You won't believe why the richest man in America ended up at a dusty gas station breaking down in tears. But trust me, it's about to change everything. He stood at that rusted shell pump along Route 65, slick black Mercedes idling behind him, his designer watch glinting in the Texas heat like a cruel spotlight. When the attendant announced, "Transaction denied. Try another card," her tone was flat, like she'd seen it 1,000 times. But this time, it cut deeper. Alexander Mitchell, age 42, once ruled the highest levels of tech, his empire worth billions. But 3 weeks ago, after stumbling onto something explosive, he vanished from the world that worshipped him. Now he was just a man they whispered about. A man whose cards got blocked by someone with inside knowledge. Trying each one in turn. Denied, denied, denied. The line behind him bubbled with frustration and murmurs. Look at that guy. Mercedes, and can't even fill the tank. A middle-aged woman laughed. Probably one of those fake Instagram influencers, right? Alexander wanted to vanish into the Texas dust. He wiped sweat from his forehead, heart pounding. And then 2 small voices cut through the noise. A pair of indistinguishable twin girls, age 8 maybe, stepping from behind the car in line. Dark-skinned, braids full of color, rosy cheeks. They looked like sunshine in human form. "We can pay for him," they said together, tiny voices full of purpose. Grace and hope, eyes shining. They held a pink purse jingling with coins. One of them, the more talkative, opened it. "We have 1560, she said, voice trembling. "It's not enough," she added, turning to her sister, who only nodded. In that instant, silence swallowed everything. The attendant looked bewildered. The mother, red-faced, burst out, "Girls, come back." But they kept walking, undeterred. Each step they took shattered Alexander's defenses. Days of being a pariah, humiliated by ex-colleagues, blocked from his own company and from investors. Gone. A lump rose in his throat. He knelt. Caught by surprise, tears pricked his eyes. Just once. "What are your names?" he asked, voice thick with something he hadn't felt in years. "Grace," said the first. "Hope," said the second. He repeated their names to himself. Hope and Grace. Something about their tiny hands holding $12.60 pressed on him more than any boardroom ever could. The crowd shifted uncomfortably. Some pulled out phones, snippets of this moment already being recorded. Alexander turned his back to them, his focus pinned to Grace and Hope, and the weight of their compassion. Unbeknownst to anyone, Alexander wasn't bankrupt. His cards were blocked. He wasn't helpless. He'd gathered evidence of corruption so deep it could topple governments. But he had vanished because he needed to protect what he'd found. He'd become a ghost. Then these 2 little girls lit a fire inside him again, something that said this quiet man still had a responsibility, and now a reason beyond himself to keep going. Later, when the media hashtagged him billionaire beggar, and memes transformed the girls' voices into mocking jingles, he sat in that cheap motel room in Texas, rage simmering. 3 weeks ago, his former partner, Jonathan Caney, had pushed him out after he uncovered how their algorithms were being used for mass surveillance. "Not now. Not ever," Jonathan had said, cold-eyed, refusing to release the truth. And now he was manufacturing humiliation, leaking it to destroy Alexander's credibility. But now he'd crossed a line. Alexander pulled out a battered laptop and typed a slow code, a silent kill switch he'd built into the system years ago. If he failed to type the code in time, everything would auto-release to trusted journalists across 7 countries. And now he had purpose, not only to expose the corruption, but to shield those 2 girls, Grace and Hope. 3 days later, he sat in a near-abandoned 24-hour diner on the outskirts of Dallas at 2:15 a.m., exhausted but alert. Samantha, a fierce investigative reporter with messy hair, walked in and slid into the booth. She'd won Pulitzers for chasing inconvenient truths. He thought she might think he was dead or gone off the grid. Instead, he pushed a folder across to her. She opened it, eyes widening as reports, accounts, contracts, audio recordings tumbled out. She whispered the words that sank in: algorithm abuse, violation of civil liberties, election interference. He nodded. He said Jonathan was using everything he could to keep him silent, and now he was attacking children. On the table, his phone buzzed. Another meme, another ridicule. They were turning Grace's voice into a national joke. Samantha looked up, alarmed. "We need to verify every document," she said. "We need time." He nodded, but he knew Jonathan wouldn't wait. He already sent threats saying he knew where Alexander and the girls were. He stood. The world was changing. That morning, keeping distance, he visited the brick school where the girls studied. Principal Washington, a seasoned educator, recognized him and greeted him carefully, her eyes curious, respectful. He told her he was worried for the girls because of him, that he wanted to fund discreet security upgrades, cameras, better access protocols, nothing flashy. She didn't have to ask why. He also offered an educational fund for the students, $250,000. He didn't want their charity, only to shield them. Principal Washington paused, then tears softened her eyes. "Because they reminded you of yourself." He nodded once, and as he left, he felt some of that purpose stick back into his bones. Meanwhile, in Manhattan's mirrored towers, Jonathan Caney was watching social media mischief unfold with a steely satisfaction. Stock tickers were ticking up. They had branded Alexander deranged. He'd ordered his security chief to apply pressure wherever Alexander might touch. Indirect threats, inconveniences added to the girls' families, anything to push him out or discredit him again. But Jonathan didn't realize he'd just stepped onto a battleground he didn't understand. Alexander had planned for this. Backdoors he'd coded into the company infrastructure years ago now siphoned every email, bank transfer, every internal chat into secure servers he controlled. Jonathan was unknowingly feeding evidence toward his own undoing. When Samantha called that night, breathless, saying she'd intercepted communications showing plans to intimidate Grace and Hope's families, Alexander clenched his jaw. He'd underestimated that brutality. But he didn't hesitate. It was time to release everything. And just like that, the story broke. As the boardroom at Technocore convened, everyone's phones lit up with the same headlines: Explosive Expose, Former CEO Triggered Surveillance Scheme, Algorithms Weaponized Against Americans. Samantha appeared live with the files, the recordings, the proof. Jonathan's voice, incriminating, hateful, the one where he threatened the girls, played on every feed. Social reaction crashed in. Outraged parents, civil rights groups, media. Nothing Jonathan could spin. Neaker Technocore files trended worldwide. Stock crashed 40+%. FBI warrants went out. By late afternoon, Jonathan was being walked out of the building, cardboard box in hand. His empire crumbled. That evening, the girls appeared on a live television. The mother, a nurse, spoke calmly and proudly. "My daughters taught us what compassion means," she said. Hope added, "Bad people are just people who forgot how to be good." 68 million watched in 24 hours. And somewhere, Jonathan curled into himself in hiding, haunted by the kindness of two little strangers who'd become the moral centerpiece of this battle. Then that text appeared on Jonathan's phone, the words that cut deeper than any legal verdict. "I didn't destroy you out of vengeance. I did it to protect two children who showed more humanity in 5 minutes than you did in 15 years. Alexander." Attached, a photo of Grace and Hope playing on a playground, pure and whole. Jonathan looked at the picture and finally realized he'd lost not just the battle, but the moral war. 6 months passed. Alexander was now rooted in Austin, running a foundation named for those girls. Its offices overlooked playgrounds, bright and full of life. Investigations poured in. Corruption tips, whistleblower leads, cases he'd protect anonymously. His assistant, once a former employee, now told him, "We have dozens of new reports." He looked at a framed photo of Grace and Hope receiving an award from the governor, Citizens of Courage. He smiled, adjusting it. "They started it," he said. "I just helped make it louder." In Detroit, Jonathan sat in a small apartment, screened out from the world he once commanded. His name was Toxic. Families divorced, doors slammed shut. A plea bargain meant over a decade behind bars. On television, ads ran for the documentary series telling the story of Little Heroes, Big Change. He stared into the blank glass of the window and remembered two girls who'd given him a lesson he couldn't forget. On the day the foundation opened a digital library at their old school, the twins ran up and hugged him shyly. "Mr. Mitchell," Grace whispered, "we still have the 1560 saved up." Alexander laughed, eyes glistening. "You keep it safe," he told them. "You taught me that the most powerful gestures come from the purest hearts." Over that year, the foundation triggered billions in fines, arrested corrupt executives, and became a movement that outlasted any boardroom or bank balance. Jonathan's prison sentence was 15 years. At sentencing, he said into the camera, voice quiet but real, "Two 8-year-old girls taught me more about morality than any business school. I hope someday I can be worthy of their forgiveness." When someone loses everything he thought mattered, sometimes the universe answers with two little messengers carrying pocket change and opens his eyes to what truly has value. And sometimes the greatest heroes are only 8 years old. If that slice of hope and justice moved you, there are more stories like this where small acts spark big change.